Top half of the second inning coming up here from Chicago. All even. The White Sox and the Red Sox 1-1. Delighted to be joined by the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, who is with us inside the booth, at least for this moment, because he's got about 9 other visits to make. He's already had about 20 of them today. But thanks so much for making time.
I'm glad to be here. Always a pleasure to see you both.
Well, I got to ask you about David Ortiz, because you saw the ceremony, very nicely done by the White Sox. We're seeing them all over the place. But one of the great spokesmen for Major League Baseball retiring. At least that's the plan right now, and the season is over.
Well, you know, David actually came in to see me during the offseason and told me he was planning on retiring. I was really surprised. He's been so effective last year and played great this year. But he's been a great ambassador for the game, really important to us, and obviously one of the great Red Sox of all time.
Yep, and a tremendous ceremony here tonight.
One of the things with baseball is as you watch one of the icons of the game leaving, you got to make sure that younger players, younger kids continue interest in the game. How do you do it?
Well, I think the key for us is to be competitive in the market for youth participation. You know, kids have a ton of choices, a lot of sports. It's not like when I was a kid, springtime you played baseball,
yeah,
right? Because that's what you had. And we have made an effort to try to increase the competitiveness of our sport. You know, we're a really safe sport that teaches great values, and we've made some nice partnerships with groups like Little League, Cal Ripken Baseball, working hard to make sure the kids choose to play baseball.
And when you say a safe sport, as Brock Holt hits that one up the middle for a base hit, do you feel like kids are going to start to move toward baseball at a younger age because parents are saying, look, football can be a dangerous game with the concussions and that sort of thing?
Well, you know, we try to avoid saying anything negative about other sports. I will say this, you know, baseball is a very, very safe game, and I think the safety of our game does appeal to parents in terms of particularly younger kids.
You know, it's a hard sport. That's the thing that I think gets kids out of the game quicker than anything else, is that they realize it gets very, very difficult to play.
It is a hard sport, and I think that one of the challenges that we're working hard on is that transition at age 12. You know, we don't even have agreement among our youth groups as to how big the field should be in that post-12-year-old age, and it's an area that we're really focused on trying to keep particularly good athletes at that point involved in the game.
Ryan Hannigan to bat at 167, no homers, runner at first base. We're tied 1-1 as we chat with Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, who actually started his day in New York today and has done about roughly 20 or 25 different interviews already, and I know you're going to be moving around, but you love this job because you'll come and watch a baseball game as soon as you do anything.
Well, I have the best job in the world. I tell people that all the time, and I really do mean it. I mean, think about it. You have a long day, and it involves being in the ballpark for a long time. Well, you know, how much better than that does it get? I mean, it is a great opportunity to work in a game that I really love.
And one of the things we love about baseball is there's always the opportunity to see something you've never seen, and we're seeing it tonight, as Major League history has been made with 4 first-place teams in one city.
It's unbelievable. You know, the Chicago clubs, both of them, have gotten off to just a great start. Tremendous interest in baseball in this town right now, and especially having the Red Sox in and an opportunity to really play against the best in each league.
0-2 pitch will miss just outside.
I have been semi-outspoken and fairly critical at times about the replay system. I'm interested in finding out what you feel about as far as how well it's working and what tweaks are we looking at in the future.
Well, I like the fundamentals of the system. I do think there was a demand from our fans that with respect to important plays, we get it right. But what are the challenges? To me, you don't want too much replay, and we constantly monitor how often we're going to replay. We've been going more this year than we have in the past. It's something that is of concern to us. The second thing that we watch really closely is the time that it takes to complete a replay. We've also crept up on that issue a little bit, so we're thinking about these issues already. There won't be a change this year, but it'll be something we'll look at again in the off season. The trick is to review the important plays, get it right, but don't do it too often or for too darn long.
Right.
Got that. The other thing about replay, and while we have you here, it's a golden chance to ask you some of these questions, so I hope you don't mind. One thing that I would love to see, it's been a bit of an old saw for me, is that one is ripped toward the alley. Cabrera's not going to get it. That's going to bounce up against the fence. Here comes Brock Holt. He's coming around to score. No throw to the plate, and the Red Sox have the lead back on an RBI double from Ryan Hanigan.
You can stay. You can stay for a little while with us. As long as you want.
As long as the team that I'm with is getting runs, I'm welcome, right?
That's right. Just don't go anywhere near the White Sox booth. That's all we ask. Yeah.
That's right.
Stay clear of that. Jackie Bradley up next. I want to ask you about the possibility of putting a microphone on, say, the crew chief during replays to let everybody in the ballpark know and the fan at home. I know you've discussed it. I know they've talked about it. Any chance of that happening?
I do think there's a chance that we'll get there as the umpires get more and more comfortable with the replay system. I think that the microphone is actually related to the issue that Steve and I talked about a minute ago. You know, if there was something for the fans to do during that downtime, in other words, the umpire came out and explained what was going on, it would make that downtime a little better.
So I
think those and educational.
Right. And, you know, right now, we're a little short on information. Let's put it that way. And it's tough in a world where people are used to, you know, being able to get at whatever kind of information they want as quickly as possible. Right.
Jackie Bradley here, 275 with a 10-game hitting streak. Nobody out. The Red Sox have retaken the lead here as that one is flared foul out of play to the left. We were talking about safety earlier. One of the things Major League Baseball has done this year is extend the netting in all ballparks, at least up until the dugout there.
Right.
And that, after a couple of things that happened, particularly last year, made all the sense in the world.
Well, I think it was a good change in terms of the recommendation that we made to the clubs. And I think it's interesting. I think the clubs acted really responsibly. They looked at their own individual design and tried to get to additional netting that would make their fans safer. Now, the flip side of that issue is what we hear from our fans that want to preserve their ability to elect to sit in a seat where they don't have netting in front of them. Those are the people we hear from. Sort of an interesting dynamic.
I think it's a really good idea. I really love the change at Fenway, for instance. And when you think about it, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to change my view of the game. But when you think about it down through time, the best seats in the house have always had a net right in front of it. So it makes sense.
I agree with you. And you know, fan safety has to be our paramount concern. Nobody wants to see somebody get hurt in the ballpark.
Mookie Betts 0 for 1, struck out looking to start the game. Rob Manfred joining us inside the booth here tonight as the Red Sox have taken a 2-1 lead over the Chicago White Sox. Are you pleased with the way the season has rolled out to this point in the early days of May?
Yes, I really am. I think that we have some really great storylines going on. We talked earlier about the two Chicago teams. Really interesting storylines. The only complaint we've had so far this year is the weather's been tough on us, particularly on the East Coast.
Don't we know us about it?
Yeah.
Been awful. And just cold and bitter, but you can't do much about that.
No. All we can do is try to play. All we can do is try to play.
There were some interesting facts that were brought up to me about that, like because people complain, well, why are two dome teams playing together at the beginning, or why is Boston not opening up on the West Coast? But you also have the fact that West Coast team, when they sell out with the Red Sox, but they would maybe rather do that in the summertime. You know, so you have to keep everybody happy with the schedule. You can't just throw everybody out there on the West Coast because it affects their dates and their attendance too.
That's exactly right. I mean, we have always balanced the number of home dates within any particular portion of the season, and it's economics. I mean, clubs generally draw better once the kids are out of school. Everybody knows that the weather's better, and the warm weather sites just don't want to have all front-loaded April dates.
All-Star game coming up in San Diego. Obviously, it used to be arbitrary who hosted the World Series, got the seventh game. Now, obviously, we know that All-Star game determines that. I don't know if that's the perfect system, but have you heard any better ideas?
Well, I mean, I think in terms of intellectual purity, you could come up with rules that, you know, either whichever league does better in interleague play, whatever team has the best overall record. Those rules are appealing. But, you know, the rule we have now is really not as much about the World Series as it is about the All-Star game.
Right.
I think that rule has restored the passion of the players for the play of the All-Star game. They have something that they're playing for. You watch them now, and they're up on the top step. Everybody's looking to win. They play the game like it matters, and it's helped keep the All-Star game the best All-Star game in professional sports.
And even before that, it was still the best All-Star game in professional sports. It was still the same game. Wasn't a hockey game where it's 14-12.
I agree. It
wasn't basketball where it's 170 to 166.
I think that what motivated us, and I was around through that whole era. Before we went to the change, we'd started to see a little slippage. Players leaving the game.
Sure.
Trying to, look, they don't have much of a break to begin with, and if you play a couple innings, then you want to go, and it just doesn't look right to the fans. This kept people in the ballpark focused on winning the game, and I think we acted at a point in time before we did damage to that product.
Dustin Pedroia batting here after his home run in the first inning. Runners on at first and second, one down. The commissioner of baseball in our booth here tonight. Xander Bogaerts on deck. And Eric Johnson making his 2016 debut delivers, and that's up and in and knocks him down. They wanted an appeal at first base to see if he swung the bat. He did not, but Dustin Pedroia able to get down in a hurry.
That ball up and in, and it's riding up and in on Dustin. Generally, a player will get his head out of the way if he sees the ball. It's one of the easier things to get out of the way. When guys get hit in the head, it's generally because they lose the flight of the ball.
Does Eric Johnson understand the commissioner is with us tonight? Does he know that?
I could have handled that appeal to first base. I think it was pretty clear that was not a swing.
That was get me out of the way.
Yeah, I had that one.
Had it all the way up here. Here's the 2-1. And hammered through for a base hit. Hannigan into third. He'll stop there, and the Red Sox have the bases loaded for Xander Bogaerts, and on top 2-1. Now, in the last few weeks, we've had a couple of players suspended for PEDs. Are you concerned at all, Mr. Commissioner, that is making a bit of a comeback in baseball? Is that a sign of that or no?
Well, look, I am always try to be vigilant. We always try to be vigilant on the issue of performance-enhancing drugs. The fact of the matter is that performance-enhancing drugs are a constant temptation for players because they work. But the way I see the couple of suspensions that we've had recently is it's validation of the fact that we have the best testing and investigation program in sports.
The system is working.
That's right. I mean, where you have to be worried, I think, is when you don't catch anybody. If you're not catching anybody, that means somebody's figured out a way to beat your system.
Yeah.
And
they're always trying to be a step ahead anyway.
Right. And look, these are really competitive young men. The economic rewards are huge. And as I say, the substances work, so they're going to be a temptation for players always.
I love the fact that you said that, because
Bogaerts lines that one to second. The throw back into second, not in time for the double play.
You don't often hear a person of your prominence and in the game talking about the temptation that provides to players. I mean, it's certainly, people certainly are against it. We know it's been a black eye for the game, but rarely do people talk about how strong that temptation could be for guys that play the game.
It is a huge temptation. I think it's actually, you're hearing more and more players speak out on this issue, and I think that it is out of a realization that it is a temptation. And it's out of a recognition that if somebody is tempted and actually goes forward with that temptation, uses the drug, they're taking advantage of their teammates and the people they're playing against. They really are.
Absolutely.
And that's why you're seeing more and more players talk about the issue.
Well, the bases are loaded for the Red Sox here as David Ortiz, 1 for 1 in the game, bats for the second time. The Red Sox have young Eric Johnson in trouble. There are 2 down. And it's down into the dirt to make it 1-1.
A lot of times when you talk that issue and the people that get caught, it seems like it's the big names that are talked about. But I look at my own career as a guy that would have been someone that could have been tempted with that. A guy who needed a little bit more to stay in the big leagues. I needed to hit a few more home runs. I needed to hit 280 instead of 260. It would have been a great temptation for me. I was never presented with it, but I look in the mirror myself and say, I don't know that I would have had the moral fortitude to say no.
Hard hit. Frazier digs it, and that will retire the side, so the Red Sox will settle for the 1 additional run, and they take a 2-1 lead. Mr. Commissioner, a delight to have you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure to see you both. Thank you.
Rob Manfred bringing the Red Sox a little luck here tonight. A 2-1 lead over the Chicago White Sox here on the South Side.